Well, Joe Biden gave his first big foreign policy interview a couple days ago to Stars and Stripes. And I have to say, it's quite remarkable. Normally, when we're in a presidential campaign season, because American foreign policy is unpopular at home, to say the least. People generally are not happy with all the wars that are going on and how much money is being spent overseas, doing what Americans perceive to be as protecting foreigners, and not doing much to protect Americans. And Joe Biden is kind of breaking with tradition, because normally, even you go back to 2000 with George W. Bush. George W. Bush did not talk like a war hawk on the campaign trail. And neither did Barack Obama, especially after 8 years of George W. Bush. Barack Obama campaigned saying that, oh my gosh, we got to end the wars, we got to come back, bring the troops home, we can't be doing all this stuff. The Iraq War was a failure, blah blah blah. And Joe Biden now is not even campaigning with that pretense. He's not playing the game of, oh, I'm going to be a dove when it's campaign season and then go to be a war hawk as soon as I'm inaugurated. No, he's running pretty much as a war hawk right now. That's his big dig against Trump in this interview, was that, oh my gosh, this Trump guy, he wants to pull all the troops home, and he wants to what's the stupid phrase they always use? Retreat from the world stage. And of course, when America retreats from the world stage, evil sort of ascends, or whatever dumb phrases these stupid people in Washington come up with. But the thing is, these are normally not phrases you hear during a campaign. These are what you hear when the guy's already in office, and they're trying to justify everything he's doing, so that it won't hurt his approval ratings too much. People go out on TV and they propagandize and say, "Oh my gosh, Iran is so bad," or Iraq is so bad that even though we don't want to be involved overseas, we just have to. We don't have a choice. Biden's coming straight out and saying, no, we need to be there everywhere. We got to be everywhere. We need to stay in the Middle East. We need to, make sure that terrorism and ISIS don't spring up, even though ISIS was, a creation of our own intelligence community. A fact that Joe Biden is, well, I don't know about it anymore because he's kind of out of it these days. But at one point, Joe Biden would have been well aware of why exactly ISIS was a problem. And so he should know that they're not going to be a problem today unless you start funding them again. ISIS, what killed ISIS, people think, oh my gosh, Trump, he was so tough, so he went in there and he beat ISIS. And that's not the case. What Trump did when he came to office was he went to the CIA and he said, stop funding ISIS. And they said, oh, gee, shucks, Mr. President, I guess we're not going to fund ISIS anymore. And then guess what? ISIS collapsed without CIA money and CIA funds. That was the CIA. The reason why ISIS existed was because the CIA was trying to topple Assad, and so they wanted to fund people who were fighting against Assad. And guess who was fighting Assad? ISIS. And then of course he goes back to the old tired thing. Not only do we have to be worried about ISIS, in the Middle East for some reason, even though ISIS isn't a threat over here, we need to be worried about terrorism in general, which that's I guess that's nothing to say about the terrorism that our own government metes out to the people of the Middle East, the terrorism that is being perpetrated against the people of Yemen or Somalia. Well, he's not talking about that kind of terrorism. I guess he's talking about terrorism like 9/11. But of course, 9/11 was a situation in which we don't have all the evidence, unfortunately. But the way things ended up, it seems like our buddies, the Saudis, had a bit of a hand in handling these people on 9/11. There, of course, was the very Saudi diplomats who were in the United States who were assisting folks like Mohammed Atta and one of the other hijackers, I believe, both in Florida and California. You had would-be hijackers staying with Saudi diplomats. And then, of course, we have that State Department whistleblower who says that, a lot of the hijackers, when they got their visas to come from Saudi Arabia to the United States, that those visas essentially came from the CIA, and that the CIA, came to the State Department consulate in Saudi Arabia and said, hey, give these guys visas. And so none of that evidence tells me that, gee, well, if you don't want another 9/11 to happen, what we need are more troops in the Middle East, because we had troops in the Middle East in 2001, and according to Al Qaeda, I mean, that was one of the reasons why they blew up the towers, because they were tired of U.S. troops in the Middle East. And considering there were only a few hundred guys in Al Qaeda back in 2001, after 20 years of a war on terror, why would they still be a threat today? Well, the reason probably isn't because our government has just been so terrible at tracking down those 600 guys, and that they've just managed to hide out this long, and that that they can still be a threat. But the problem, more in line with reality, is that in trying to kill those 600 guys, the U.S. military created so much collateral damage that they ended up creating thousands and thousands of more terrorists. They radicalized, a whole generation of young men in the Middle East to hate America for pretty good reason. Their countries were destroyed by the United States. Their family picnics obliterated by the United States. You could have, you had a gathering of like 80 people in your family, and they all dead. Just in the blink of an eye, because somebody was accused of associating with some anti-American group. And so what Joe Biden thinks we need to keep us safe is more of that, forever. Although it was funny, he said the forever wars have to end, because I guess they still feel like they have to throw that quote in there, because they know deep down that what they're doing is pure evil, and that the voters recognize that. But the voters are much more concerned about things that directly affect their lives, so they can kind of get away with just giving BS lip service. But I mean, for most of the interview, Biden did not seem to be doing that. Biden was very much trying to talk tough, and seem like he was the big man in the room. And apparently, and I first heard this last night on Jimmy Dore, so I had to go back and read the interview to make sure that this was true. But apparently Joe Biden actually wants to increase the U.S. military's budget, which, surprise, surprise, every president does that. But, we're told that, oh my gosh, the Democrats, these are the people, they gut our military. That's what we were told for 8 years under Obama. Oh my gosh, Obama's gutting our military. Well, their budget went up. How is he gutting the military? Oh, it's terrible. The troops don't even have enough ammunition to practice, for target practice. Meanwhile, the military has so much surplus ammunition that for some reason they refuse to sell to the American people, so they just blow it up with Raytheon bombs. I mean, they say they don't have enough ammunition for target practice. They're literally using the ammunition as target practice. They're firing bigger bombs at the ammunition and blowing it up. So Joe wants to come in. He wants to defeat terrorism and ISIS and keep troops in the Middle East forever. And he also wants to stand up to Russia, who he considers to be a near-peer power, which is ridiculous. Because Russia is essentially an oil company with an economy the size of Italy, so they're not exactly a big power in the world in any real sense, other than the fact that they control a lot of territory. But it's territory that isn't of much importance. It's Siberia. I mean, if there's anything really to be concerned about with Russia, it's the fact that they have nukes, which, if you ever have any nuclear state, your priority should be very good friends with those people, because you don't want to make enemies of nuclear powers, because you don't want to get anywhere near close to having any sort of threat of war with another nuclear power. That cannot happen. Any reasonable statesman understands this. Anyone who actually cares about their country, who cares about the lives of their voters, would understand that your first priority when it comes to dealing with other nuclear powers is to be as good a buddies as possible. That doesn't mean that you have to be, best friends, but you need to be friendly. And if for whatever reason, your two countries are not friendly when you come into office, you need to make it your mission to mend that divide, to ensure that there is no threat of a nuclear holocaust. I mean, it's just like people think that since the Cold War ended in 1991, even though we have all this neo-Cold War rhetoric trying to stoke tensions with both China and Russia for some reason, people just think that the threat of nuclear war went away in 1991. which is totally absurd. If anything, because Russia is so weak now compared to how they were before, they are probably much more likely to resort to using, their nukes to defend themselves in the case of some kind of international conflict. I believe that's a part of their nuclear doctrine. The whole phrase "escalate to de-escalate." So if anyone tries to start a war with them, they very quickly will launch off a nuke and say, hey, you don't want that to happen again, so don't screw with us. So I would think, hey, the safe thing to do there is to make sure you never get into a war with Russia for any stupid reason, because there really is no good reason ever to get into wars with any country that I can think of. But Russia in particular, Russia is, pretty darn far away from everything, except I guess maybe Alaska. But I mean, the part of Russia that Alaska is near is so far away from Moscow that it's not. It doesn't really matter. But because of all the the Russiagate red baiting that's gone on over the last 4 years, trying to say that Trump is a Russian puppet, I guess it's inevitable that whoever the Democrat nominee is going to have to try and act like they're very tough on Russia for no other reason than just to appeal to the brain dead resistance crowd. And also, given Biden's history, his to me hazy history of business dealings with China, which honestly I don't fully understand yet, so I'm not going to try and make a determination one way or the other. It seems like Russia would be an easy target for him because if he has reasons for not wanting to really go after China, which frankly, I don't want him to go after China anyway. I don't care what his reasons are. China is just like Russia. China's a nuclear power. Shouldn't go after them. We should try and be somewhat friendly with them. Russia gives Biden an opportunity to act tough without actually having to do anything to confront China. But I have to say, this interview that Biden did, I think that if you hand it off to an ordinary person who is not a fan of the warfare state, it would probably push you in the direction of voting for Trump. I still am not there personally, because Trump is not great on these issues either. But Biden's campaign rhetoric is so bad, it makes me really think, gee, how much worse actually will he be as president if he's already talking this horribly about foreign policy? It really does scare me personally, because foreign policy does matter. Matters more than most things, because the very euphemistic term foreign policy refers to the U.S.'s ongoing campaign of murdering innocent people across the globe. That's how I look at it as a citizen and as a taxpayer, because that's a pretty serious thing. It's one thing if the government without my consent decides to take money out of my paycheck and give it to the homeless or something, or use it to line the pockets of some bureaucrat. But it's another thing if they take money out of my pocket without my consent and use it to buy bombs so that Saudi Arabia can go and bomb the food supply of innocent children. It's a unique evil amongst all the evils of government. So, with that said, if you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So, I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.